Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of Tales from the Fandom. Today, I am joined by a person I've been following on Twitter for such a long time, and they have their own podcast as well. I am joined by Ryan Boelter. You might know them as Lord Neptune, pretty much on most of the socials that are out there, and he's also the co-host of Character Creation Podcast, amongst a number of other things that he does out in the world. Ryan, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you?
I am doing wonderful. Like I said, you have your hands in so many things that we're going to be talking about
Yeah.
later on in the episode that we were just talking about, just juggling responsibilities, and you have kids, I have kids, you have
hmm
podcasts. I have just this podcast, but you have more than one podcast that you
Yep.
wrangle.
It's very true, and I have no idea how I find time for half of it.
Yeah, it is absolutely wonder. Like it's a wonder because I was talking to my wife earlier. I said, by the time this episode comes out, I'll have passed the 5 year mark, and it's like I don't understand how I've been doing this for 5 years, but here I am, just continuing on.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, Ryan, we've got a lot of we've got two big fandoms that we're going to talk about. One I don't think I've ever talked about on the podcast before,
Ooh.
but we're going to kick things off with one that I've talked about multiple times on the
I
podcast,
have seen that.
which is which it actually surprised me when you had sent over your thing and you said that one of your big fandoms is Sailor Moon.
What? Oh, why would that surprise you?
I
Like,
I, I I'm not going to say it's not something out of the ordinary for guys to be into, because I remember watching it during high school,
oh yeah.
but it's not something that you see often
hmm
amongst men talking about anime.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, Sailor Moon was my first anime love back in the 90s. It was the on at 5:30 in the morning every day, every weekday. I literally had to wake up. I set an alarm and I woke up and I turned my TV on really quiet, kept my door closed in my bedroom. So my dad, who got up shortly after 5:30, wouldn't know that I was watching TV at that time, and I would watch Sailor Moon. The old the Dick the releases in the U.S. I was hooked. I had never seen anime before that point, and the storylines were so intriguing, and like these were like stories that I could see people looking up to, which was really cool. So it just like piqued my interest, and it just grew from there.
How did you discover Sailor Moon? Because I remember when it came over to the States originally, like on Toonami, and that like there's an article in the newspaper about, oh my
hmm
gosh, Sailor Moon is here. Everyone get ready for it type thing. Um, and it was definitely something where like Cartoon Network was just basically like, here's Sailor Moon. And
Yeah, this was before Cartoon Network.
oh my gosh.
This was on over the air, local television stations in the States, mid to late 90s or so. And yeah, they 5:30 in the morning. I honestly don't remember how I learned about this. I don't know if it was a commercial or what. But for whatever reason, I just remember waking up at 5:30 every morning and watching it. I don't remember how it started, but it was definitely a morning ritual of mine every single time. I would watch it. I would literally watch it and then go to bed for another half an hour afterwards, and then get up at 6:30 and get ready for school. Uh, it was just a fun time. But that was right around the internet age for
Hmm.
me as well. Got my first computer in 94, and then finally got the internet in 95 or 96. Good old dial up.
Yep.
And I heard of a campaign to quote unquote save our sailors. It was a campaign in the late 90s, I think it was, probably around 96, 97, that was trying to save the cancellation, of Sailor Moon in the States. And that campaign was successful. It actually got them to release and dub multiple other episodes that started pushing into the Outer Senshi,
Hmm.
which was really interesting. And I was part of that campaign a little bit. And through that website, I actually found, this is going back to the Quake 1 days of the old PC games,
Yep.
Quake, when there were like what they called Quake clans online, where it was just a group of people that were under a particular like fandom umbrella of sorts, and every person would name themselves after something in that theme. I happened upon the Silver Millennium Clan (SMC), and we were all named after the Sailor Scouts. I originally wanted to go with Mercury, which is interesting, but it was taken. Mercury was my first choice because uh, a brainiac that with blue hair, uh, kind of on the outskirts of social interactions and whatnot, was very attractive to me.
Hmm.
But and also water, I just the whole water motif. Um, but Mercury was taken already by somebody else in the group, so Neptune was my second choice. Also water motif, of course. Um, and and that's how I got the Neptune in my Lord Neptune name, because of that, joining that clan, I guess you could call it.
That is a fascinating story, like, especially because it feels like we're both in like that same time period of growing up. Like, I
Mm.
remember like running a bulletin board system in like 96 dial
Oh
up. So
yeah.
people would dial into my computer and play like trade wars and
Oh yeah.
stuff like that. And yeah, and in my junior years when I found Sailor Moon, because one of my friends would get tapes shipped to him from Japan
Oh wow.
of like the episodes, and they, of course, there's no dubbing, there's no
Hmm.
subtitles, and he was just learning Japanese based off of
Oh
the
wow.
anime he was watching.
Hmm.
So it's wonderful. I very rarely get to talk to someone in like my age range of time of growing up in that, like, that pre-internet, or just like
Yeah,
the baby internet
like the
time.
the proto internet.
Yeah, like you're bringing me back to like clans and stuff, like people go like bringing their computers and doing LAN
Yeah.
parties and stuff like that.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
it was a fantastic time because like back in those days they had mods for Quake and all that sort of stuff, and when we joined multiplayer servers, all of our players, we use custom skins for our players, and all of our skins matched the colors and sailor outfits of the scouts that we represented.
Hmm.
So we were literally like, you know, Quake 1 graphics, uh, walking through and fighting other teams as the Sailor Scouts,
That's
which was just
awesome.
phenomenal. So it was really funny because like, sometimes we would use like different things that had like a grappling hook and whatnot, and there's always the rocket launcher, but you see a scout running around like a Sailor Moon or Sailor Mercury, just running around with a rocket launcher or a grappling hook, and it's hilarious.
That's really cool. I like that you got the name Neptune from going all the way back to that. Like, that's
Yeah,
history. That's
it
that's awesome.
it definitely was an interesting twinge of fate because like um after I got that moniker, it kind of evolved into from SMC Neptune to Sir Neptune, because of the whole knightly theme and stuff. And then I wanted to be more intimidating in online games, so it changed from Sir Neptune to Lord Neptune. And then that one just kind of stuck.
Okay.
Yeah.
As far as Sailor Moon goes, like, are you still into Sailor Moon? Is it something like,
Oh yeah.
are you watching Crystal and anticipating? I know that we're recording this June 2nd, so I think the movies come out on Netflix tomorrow.
So close to being out. I'm actually making my way through the original series again. and now for the first time getting to episodes I hadn't gotten to see before. Um, I'm on probably 130, episode 130 right now out of 200. Um, and I am loving every second of going through it. Like the older episodes, the first 100 or so, I remember from growing up, and uh, it was just a huge nostalgic trip getting to see those again. They were redubbed by Viz Media, and they did a much better job, in my opinion. And the episodes that they got to, when it got to the outer century, finally, when Sailor Neptune and Sailor Uranus made their first appearances, I got emotional. And Sailor Neptune's first transformation sequence, I actually cried because it was just like this like I haven't seen this in 20 years,
Hmm.
and like all of these just emotions just kind of hit me. Like this is uh like the personality that kind of defines who I am in a way. And seeing her on screen was just such a wonderful experience.
I can't even imagine. I mean, I tried to get my kids to watch the originals,
Yeah.
and it it didn't go for them.
Hmm.
They didn't get I and it's happened on a couple of other of the animated series that I've tried to introduce them to, like the original
Yeah.
Ninja Turtles and the
Oh,
original,
okay.
and I don't know if it's just they reuse, because they called out some of the other Netflix shows that we watched, like the
Yeah.
new version of Voltron and She-Ra, and they're using the same thing over and over again.
Hmm.
And I said, yeah, that's what they do with
Yep.
animation sometimes, and it's more like the stuff that I grew up with. You'll
Hmm.
see it over and over again.
Oh, that's really interesting because both of my kids, my son's 5.5 now, my daughter's almost 3. And probably half a year ago, I was watching some of the earlier Sailor Moon episodes, and they were watching along with me down here, and goodness, they were into it. Like they loved it. They wanted to see more, and I'm like, I want to show you more, but I don't have the time to.
They
So someday we'll go through them, I believe, and I think they're gonna love it. But right now we're going through like all sorts of other animations. We're starting. We're on the second season of Avatar: The Last Airbender for the first
Okay,
time.
yeah,
So this is my first time seeing it. My wife's, of course, as well, um, and both kids are loving it. We've made it through Shira, The Witch House, Dragon Prince, Kipo, all these wonderful animations that are out there that are just like so good to have this sort of like representation,
hmm,
to see it on screen for the kids. Um, and I think that's why Sailor Moon's kind of going to hit really well with them, because they love seeing like strong women protagonists, and different sort of people being in a like very powerful and empowering sort of role. And that's kind of what Sailor Moon's all about, right?
right. Yeah, my kids, they loved Kipo, Dragon Prince, She-Ra,
Yeah.
Voltron. Like we burned through all of them. They loved Avatar, because we did Avatar and then Legend of Korra back to back. Because
Yeah.
Avatar is one of my favorite TV shows of all time, and
I
I
hear
just
that so often.
yeah, I love it. And like between that show, like the show, and then Uncle Iroh is one of my favorite characters of all time, whether it's
Hmm.
animated or an actor portraying.
Oh,
Like
very interesting.
I just that show is wonderful. It's like when I rewatch it, it's like I learn something new every time I sit
Hmm.
through and watch it.
Yeah. Yeah, no,
Now
that's interesting.
with Sailor Moon, and I mean, you're rewatching it now. You got
Hmm.
the movies coming out. Like you are someone, I it's very rare for me to find somebody that's like actually still watching the originals, because
Mm.
either people just Sailor Moon had the influence on them and it stuck with them, and
Hmm.
they pick up the merch or they cosplay as a
Yeah.
scout, but they don't really interact with like the original stuff. They have maybe the manga or they're watching Crystal.
Hmm.
It's really fascinating to find somebody that's still watching, going through and watching the originals.
Well,
That's awesome.
there's something special about the originals. Like if you're watching Crystal, and I've seen a little bit of the first season, I haven't been able to watch it all the way through because I wanted to get through all of the original series before I started Crystal again. Um, but the original has a lot of filler episodes
Hmm.
that Crystal doesn't, right? And a lot of these filler episodes actually have a ton of character development, like personal character development instead of like sailor transformation development of sorts,
Right.
right? So it's like a lot of the little things like where Sailor Venus is trying to be a nurse and failing horribly at it for everybody. It's hilarious. I don't know if that sort of stuff is in Crystal because I haven't been able to get too far into it, but just all these little side things that probably don't exist in the Crystal version, just because they had the time to go through and add all of that extra fluff to pad out the runtime and all that sort of stuff, right?
Right. Yeah, I don't think it's in Crystal at all because that's what I've heard that Crystal is more like it takes its cues from the manga, but it's very streamlined.
Yeah, yeah, and I heard that the manga is pretty streamlined as well,
Hmm.
right? So it really it really gets to the point of the story. The bad guys don't get as much screen time in Crystal, from what I understand, because they don't in the or in the manga either. And goodness, it's like from what I understand in Crystal, the bad guys last an episode or two, give or take. And then
Okay.
there's the new one. There's another one, and then there's another one, and then there's another one. And you don't get to like follow all their failures and like see their anger like increase, and then finally when it gets to the final showdown between Sailor Moon and one of the big baddies of the week, right? um it has more of an emotional impact, I believe, in the original series because there's more built up to it, right?
Oh yeah, you've been sticking with them for X number of episodes, and you just keep watching it, and you're like, it's going to happen. Like something's
Yeah,
like they're going to reach that point where it's like it's all or nothing. And I know a previous guest was joking about how when she was a kid watching it, you're watching the sailors like pass out, but they're
yeah.
not really passing out. And she was like, to a kid, you're just like, oh, they're going to sleep, and then they come back, and
Hmm.
but like they're actually dying. Like
Yep.
that was the funny thing was they're actually dying.
Yeah, because in the first, spoilers for a 30-year-old series, in the first storyline with Queen Beryl, when they get to that point where they have to face Beryl, all the scouts die. Like, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. They die. They get resurrected the next episode. Like, literally, it says they get reincarnated
Hmm.
and they lost all their memories of each other. And like the impact of that was just so emotional to know that they had these like strong bonds with one another and then they forget everything because they literally died, and the only way to bring them back was to erase their memories in the process. That's wild.
Yeah, it's definitely something that back in those days, like in that time period, like they weren't afraid to just go with where they were going with the story.
Hmm.
And you know what? We have just killed your favorite characters.
I
Come
know.
back next week.
I know. It was so amazing to see. And to experience it at my age now and to understand everything fully, it I believe was even more impactful than it was back in the day.
Hmm.
Because back in the day, I barely remember watching those episodes. I remember the big parts. I remember Sailor Moon standing up to Queen Beryl, and then the giant energy dome pushing back against Queen Beryl's big energy blast. Standard anime trope stuff. But I didn't remember all that background emotional stuff that kind of hit. And then knowing that they had these friendships and then they were torn apart from them just kind of devastated me a bit. And I don't think I realized that back in the day.
Oh yeah, it's especially with something like that where you get like you get to see it through the eyes of, like you said, realizing it now what was going on versus just the faint memories
Yeah.
of watching it when you were younger. It's definitely where it's like, oh, like, just, it's the
Yeah.
constant, like, you remember it, but then it just you get to process it
Hmm.
as we are as adults now.
Yeah, and can I say the Sailor Chibi Moon stuff is hitting so much harder as a parent. Like there's some parts of that storyline in I think it was Sailor Moon S that it just was an emotional gut punch to know as a parent what this child is having to go through in some of these episodes.
Yeah, it is absolutely it's one of the fandoms that I'm always considering, as far as, like, you have, like, your big fandoms like Lord of the Rings and Star
Hmm.
Wars, the ones that have been around for a long time, and then you have something like Sailor Moon, which in its own right has been around for such a long time,
Yeah.
and it it stands up to that, and it continues to bring new people
Hmm.
into the fandom, whether it's through like Crystal, or discovering the older
Hmm.
episodes, or manga, or like Netflix is about to unleash more people
Yeah.
to have it, and it's wonderful to just see it continue, and to continue to bring in new people to just discover it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it's kind of timeless in a way. Some of the tech doesn't hold up, of course, but aside from that, it's one of those things that's kind of a timeless story because it's a coming of age story. It's the like tropiest of tropes of magical girls because it's one of the originators of the genre,
Right.
right? It helped define the magical girl genre. Before that, there were a few other things here and there that date back into the 80s, but like aside from that, this is the one that everything gets compared to,
Hmm.
right? If you're doing a magical girl anything, it gets compared to Sailor Moon.
Oh, automatically,
Yeah.
automatically. Now, speaking of time, we're gonna hit the next fandom,
Yeah.
which I don't think I've talked to anybody about,
Hmm.
to be quite honest, and it is the Wheel of Time series.
Yeah, the Wheel of Time series by Robert Jordan, and later taken up by Brandon Sanderson. Gosh, there is a lot to say about this series. There's a lot of good things to say. I can say that. There's a ton of bad things to say. I can also say that. There's a lot of problematic content, as is the case in a lot of epic fantasy throughout history, I guess.
Hmm.
I don't know of I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of epic fantasies out there that handle things fairly well, but Wheel of Time gets a lot of flack for the way it portrays women. Um, and I can see that women in the Wheel of Time are usually very angry and they get their power from anger, and like there's a lot of weird stuff around there and everything. But if you set that all aside, the story of the Wheel of Time is fascinating because it's all about a cyclical nature of time, right? And you throw time travel nonsense into pretty much anything, and I am all over that. Like, goodness, Back to the Future is probably one of my favorite series of movies just because, time travel nonsense. I love thinking about like time paradoxes. I love thinking about like Um, if you go back to the past, did you always go back to the past? So you could do like the Bill and Ted
Yes.
Excellent Adventure thing where it's like, all right, future me, remember this. Let's put the keys in the drawer. Hey, look, they're right next to us. This is
Yeah.
awesome. It's great. That sort of like time travel it just really gets my mind going. But then the Wheel of Time does that on a grander scale. And the gist of it, without giving too much away, is that the eras come and go and then come again. And it just keeps doing that forever. There's a constant battle between good and evil. There's the Satan versus Sadar, which is like the two different magic types of the world. Um, it's been a while. I think it's Sadar that is the quote unquote male magic users are able to use, and Satan, I believe, is the one where the quote unquote female magic users can use. And the Sadar version of magic got tainted by the Dark One. So all male magic users ended up effectively losing their minds, right? They went mad with power, and eventually they burn themselves out completely. They lose all ability to do magic because of the burnout, and sometimes they accidentally destroy themselves.
Wonderful.
Yeah, it's very it's a very explosive thing to have this Sadar ability, because you're not only a danger to yourself, you're a danger to others around you, right? So the whole story picks up in this world where women magic users are kind of at the top of the chain of power, and they kind of it kind of goes into almost a Harry Potter school sort of thing, with like different schools of wizardry, I guess you could say. So instead of Hufflepuff and whatnot, there's the white Aja, the green Aja, the blue Aja, the red Aja, um, the different colors, and then there's also the black Aja, which are the evil ones, right?
Okay.
So it's very there's a lot of little tropey things in there too, like, you know, the black color of all of our schools is the evil one. We don't talk about them, right?
Of
Because they're
course.
trying to help the dark one. So the whole story is about these three villagers from this like nowhere village are being targeted by the dark one for some reason. And there happens to be an Aes Sedai, which is one of the women that is able to use all of this magic called channeling, right? And Aes Sedai recognizes that they're special, recognizes that they're getting targeted, and needs to bring them to the White Tower, the base of operations of all of the Aes Sedai in the world, right? So they go on this journey. It's like a very Lord of the Rings-esque journey, and it's all about one of those three villagers is the dragon reborn. The dragon is like the male channeler that's going to take down the dark one, right?
Okay.
So we have to figure out which one of them is it and what makes all three of them so special. It's a grand adventure. There's hundreds of characters. Like, the amount of characters that are actually important in this series is through the roof. And every character gets amazing descriptions and plenty of personality, plenty of time within the story. There's a lot of like side stories as well that kind of all weave together, because everything's about a weave
Hmm.
of the wheel of time, and then the wheel weaves as the wheel wills, as they say, because it's all a tapestry. All the magic is done by weaving the magic threads. and creating special weaves to create a spell, right? So there's all this like weaving imagery within within the story as well. And yeah, I can't give too much more away without spoiling it, but basically, they have to go and save the world from the Dark One. And in doing so, they find out a lot of like quote unquote history of the world, of past ages that had happened before that are going to happen again.
Okay.
And so they have like allusions to legends of our world. Like they've got allusions to King Arthur, right? Like King Arthur, not called King Arthur in the books. I forget what, I think it's like Artur or something like that. That this is an actual person that lived, was an actual like channeler, and used some fantastic magical items to rule a certain area of the world or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
There's a point where they learn about metal flying machines that alludes to like airplanes or helicopters or whatever.
Okay.
Um, and all of that stuff doesn't exist currently in the world because you're in the middle of a high fantasy Lord of the Rings level tech world.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got all these clues that this is just another loop of the timeline that you're stuck in. So time travel nonsense. Yeah, it's just spread out over eons instead of like, years.
I know when I was in college, I think college or right around a little bit after, I love fantasy. I love getting to read it, and I picked up the first book,
Yeah.
and I did not get very far in the first book. It was very, I don't know, there's just something about it where I could not get into it. I couldn't like
It's a
just
it's
get
it's a
past
hard
into it.
it's a hard read. Um there's a lot of description. There's a lot of exposition at times. The first book's a little slow at first. In the first half of the book, it's a little slow. It picks up in the second half. And then after the second half happens, once you're done with that book, the next like 3 books hit pretty good. And then it slows down for a few books. I think after book 5, for like 3 or 4 books, practically nothing happens. It's a 14-book series, and every book's about 1,000 pages.
Woo!
It's big, right? Actually, it's 15-book series because there was a prequel book as well, and the books are so long. I found them all fascinating, even the slow books, because it added a bunch of background information, and that's kind of what I love about
Mhm.
storytelling is the world building.
Yes.
And goodness, the Wheel of Time does world building so well. There are lots and lots of details throughout the whole series that just builds onto this like there's more going on in this world than just our protagonists.
Mhm.
There's some books out there that like all you know of the world is through the eyes of your protagonist. Well, this one's got at least 3 protagonists, sometimes more, and you're swapping between their points of view from time to time, and they get split up often, and they're all finding out different things about the world because they're all from this one small village that they've never left before.
Mhm.
And now they're exploring the world as a whole and learning all this new stuff. And you get to learn it all on with them, right? So it's the world building is probably the biggest draw of this series for me, because the way they do magic is fascinating. The way that the history of the world kind of melds in with the present of the world, which in turn melds in with the future direction of the world, is super fascinating. It's hard to see where everything started and where it ends, because it's just a circle of time,
Right.
a wheel of time, so to speak. And the even the books that didn't do anything, stuff still happened, but they just went over the same events from different points of view.
Hmm.
And I found that super fascinating. Um, and I'm probably in the minority there. So if you're going to be going to read the books, first of all, buckle up. It's a big commitment to read this series, but the actual world building, if you love that sort of stuff, can probably get you through most of it. Plus, there's a TV series coming out.
That's what I've heard. And I as a book reader or person that watches a lot of TV or movies,
Yeah,
one of the things that I love is world building. And it's one of the things where when I watch a show, it's more of give me more. I need
yeah,
more backstory. Give me more world history. Give me more
yes.
lore. Like let me sink my teeth into what you have created, please.
Hmm. See, that's the thing. The TV series has a huge opportunity here. There's a lot of problematic stuff, like I said, in this series. And if they can fix a lot of those issues, they're going to be set to tell a fantastic story. They can easily fix the pacing. They could probably get the whole show done from book 1 through 14 in maybe 5 or 6 seasons if they do it right. They've already wrapped filming season 1. They've already gotten renewed for season 2. An episode hasn't even come out yet.
Hmm.
But for whatever reason, it's just I I have a little bit of faith because of the casting that they've done for the show. It's a very diverse cast, which I love to see. The whole cast is not whitewashed, and I'm really excited to see if that sort of decision is going to go forward, and if they improve everything on there, it's going to be pretty fantastic. I'm really excited. Amazon, love them or hate them, uh, they're a big company with deep wallets,
Yep.
and this might be, their big Game of Thrones moment, possibly.
Yeah, because
Right.
they also have the Lord of the Rings series too that they have
Hmm.
on the hook for at least. I know that they've done or are committed to one season plus at least another one or two.
Yeah, that's what I heard. Yeah, Lord of the Rings. I don't know what they're going to do with that. I hope they also go a route of fixing a lot of the stuff in Lord of the Rings. Um, I mean, it's a classic epic fantasy story, but there are a lot of problems with that one too.
Yeah.
Um, but if we can reimagine these wonderful series that have a lot of problems in them and make them more relevant to modern audiences, um, I think we are kind of on the cusp of a epic fantasy renaissance, so to speak. Just this reemergence of really good, meaty fantasy stories.
Hmm.
Game of Thrones was almost there, but they had so many problems with that as well.
Yeah.
For anyone that's seen Game of Thrones, they probably know exactly what I'm talking about. But I think they're going to do better with these ones.
My fingers are crossed for them. I'm waiting for them to come out. I thought Lord of the Rings was going to be out this year. I'm not sure.
Hmm.
It might be like another year, maybe. I don't know where they are in the process. I've been trying to stay away from like spoilers. I've seen the casting, and I was
Hmm.
like, okay, casting's good,
Yeah.
diverse, across the board. So
Hmm.
that's a good first step. Well,
Yeah.
let's see what they take and do with it.
Hmm. Absolutely. I'm really enjoying seeing a lot of these older fandoms coming to light with some really diverse casting for the new series that are coming out. I'm really thankful that they're going out of their way to bring new faces into it, where people have uh, or more people have something to look up to,
Yes.
somebody to look up to have a hero uh, that has a face there like theirs.
Hmm.
Um, that is so important in all aspects of life, but especially when you're talking about fantasy or superheroes or anything like that. I mean, you just look at Black Panther when that came out, how big of an impact on that community it was. It was just finally a superhero movie that a whole group of people can look up to
Hmm.
that wasn't there before. And I'm very thankful that it's getting more diverse.
Absolutely. I'm 100% with you on that. And I'm like, I was talking to somebody today about, I don't know if you've seen it, Shadow and Bone on Netflix, and about the
Mm,
representation on that show, and how even just changing a character to be half Asian
hmm.
has impacted so many people, because now that they have a fantasy, a female protagonist that looks like them, and how much it's
Yeah.
impacted that community. And just, it's just wonderful to see.
Yeah, that's the type of stuff that I love so much right now. Uplifting people is one of the things that I strive to do. And seeing people having these sort of reactions just warms my heart every single time.
So we've got Sailor Moon and Wheel of Time, but now
Hmm.
we're entering the part where how we kind of, or at least for me, I stumbled across your account because we occupy the realm of like tabletop role playing games on Twitter.
Hmm.
You do a lot of stuff as far as the community, whether it is, as I said at the beginning, the Creation Cast podcast,
Hmm.
whether it is actual play podcasts.
Hmm.
You have a actual role playing game that just released,
Hmm.
the Chimera RPG.
Yep.
So, Ryan, where would you like to start with? As far as, in fact, I guess the best question is, how did you first get into tabletop role playing?
All right. In the beginning, there was a 13-year-old boy named Ryan Boelter. It's a funny story. I didn't know what tabletop RPGs were back in the day. I had heard of D&D, but it didn't really click in my brain what it was exactly, right? Because there were some computer games, there were some console games, video games based on Dungeons and Dragons
Hmm.
that I enjoyed, but I didn't really think about it too much. And then my friend found an advertisement in our middle school newspaper. We were in 8th grade. And he said, "Oh, hey, there's an RPG club starting. Um, I wonder if they play games like Final Fantasy and stuff and talk about them. And we love Final Fantasy, so maybe we'll love this." So we went. We went to the club. There was like a few other people from the school that had gone as well. And turns out wasn't Final Fantasy. But we were introduced to Palladium's Heroes Unlimited, and it was uh, the thing that sparked everything for me was one of my good friends, Nate. He was describing kind of what role playing was all about. He said, "Imagine you are a superhero with the ability to manipulate fire, and you're going down a dark alley, and you hear a sound in the darkness. What do you do?" I say, "Well, I've got fire powers, so I would probably light a flame in my hand and try to see." And then he said, "Oh, you could do that, and then you could see what's back there. That's role playing." And it just blew my mind. It's like, what? We're telling a story by pretending to be a character, but there's rules for it and everything. This is wild. So we played Heroes Unlimited. I I just fell in love with the whole superhero RPG genre. I fell in love with Palladium, for better or worse. And then, we played Rifts, we played Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I started another group with some other friends that I had from middle school and high school. And so I was doing a couple different groups at the same time at one point. And uh, everything just kind of culminated into every single week doing RPGs and quote unquote doing it wrong for the first few years because we were middle schoolers and who knew how to craft a story back then, right?
Right.
It was, oh, what's the most damage that I can do? This sounds good. Sure, I'll carry around these highly explosive containers that can blow up if I get knocked down too hard. That's okay. They do a lot of damage.
Yep.
So it went from that. And once we turned about 16, 17, our stories started turning into something a lot more dramatic, something a lot more comic booky. And we grew up effectively. We got out of the quote unquote murder hobo mindset and went to like, now we're telling comic book stories. And this is really cool. It's even cooler than it was before. And I never lost that love of role playing. Even after the college years when everybody split apart, it was
Hmm.
still something that I've always wanted to get back into. Right? I graduated college in 2005. Most of my friends had moved away. We didn't have time anymore.
Yep.
Some people were starting families. It was the role playing drought, I guess you could call it. And then I discovered podcasts. And I was like, well, I want to try out podcasts. I want to learn some stuff. I want to listen to stuff about different role playing games and whatnot and see what sort of entertainment I can have. Because now I have these commutes, right? This was like 2016, 2017 or
Okay.
so. And the first podcast I listened to was Dungeon Master's Block, which is or DM's Block. It's all about like advice for dungeon masters. Like you're trying to get out of the writer's block for DMs. It's kind of the play on words, but it's also a block party. So, um, and it was an interesting thing because there was like there are hundreds and hundreds of podcasts to choose from. I was like, well, this one sounds interesting. It has over 100 episodes. It's still releasing stuff, so I'll listen to it.
Right.
It went from that to like saying, hey, I noticed your website's broken. Do you need help? And they're like, yeah, sure. We don't know what we're doing right now. So I fixed their website. And then it went from that to, hey, do you want to guest voice on this thing? And I said, sure.
Hmm.
And then it went from that to, okay, I guess I'm podcasting now. Because the first episode I recorded with them, I think it was Geek Wars. I had just a headset microphone, and my quality was horrible. And eventually, I was like, okay, I need something better. So I invested in a Yeti
Yep.
microphone, the core podcaster starter kit, I guess you could call it.
Yep. My first one is sitting right next to me,
you
collecting dust.
you learn once you get a better microphone that the Yeti, as great it is not as great as some other options out there. Um, I'm just saying. So if anybody's trying to get into podcasting, let me know, and I can give you some wonderful recommendations for microphones that are a little bit cheaper than the Yeti. Anyway, I went off on a little bit of a tangent there. All of this is to say, I was finally able to start getting into role playing again with the internet and with the love of RPGs kind of rekindling because of all this stuff. And we were able to kind of start some sessions here and there. Um, and it was a little difficult because at this point, my son was born, and he was a baby. And then our second one was on the way,
Hmm.
and then she was a baby. And for people that have been new parents out there, you know what happens to your time. It doesn't exist anymore.
Yep.
um, but eventually we landed on a game. My best friend since first grade, and we kind of started a new group um, with a few of his friends and his friend's daughter and his daughter, and they were ages 9 and 10 when we started. We started playing Beyond the Wall, which is a high fantasy RPG that's very Dungeons and Dragons esque with a simpler rule set,
Hmm.
and it clicked very well with everybody in the group. And this is the kids' first time playing RPGs as well. And being able to kind of tell stories at that family friendly level and seeing the joy that it's bringing to these kids has been just a remarkable experience. It's been kind of game changing in terms of uh, what sort of joy I get out of RPGs. Seeing that spark of creativity kind of being kindled for the first time in another person is a remarkable thing to behold.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's RPGs have kind of defined who I have been since the early 90s, right? And I was finally able to get into a place where I could start using that love of this whole fandom, right? And cultivate that into a podcast, into sound designing another podcast, into making my own game, right? And all of that put together effectively created one of the things I'm most proud of, character creation cast, right? You can kind of see the logo behind me
Yep.
on my wall. It is a at the surface, it's a character creation podcast where we create characters with people across the industry and in the community for various systems, and and we learn about the games through the lens of character creation. But going deeper than that, we learn so much more. We learn about game design theory. We learn about like character creation theory. We learn about helpful player tips, things like that kind of come up all the time. And it's so much more than just a character creation podcast,
Hmm.
even though it's so frustrating creating the characters and not being able to play them.
But that's what all people who play tabletop games do, is like you have folders full of
I
characters
know.
that you'd love to play.
I know. It's a blessing and a curse because obviously character creation is one of my favorite parts of RPGs. Otherwise, I would have created a character creation podcast, right? But um, goodness, it's just torture every single month. It's like I love this new character and I can't play it because I don't have time. But it's okay because we have a small fan fiction section that we get to like quote unquote play it a little bit by pretending that we're playing it. Um it's not enough, let me tell you. I need more time in like if we could extend a week to a year and just give me that extra time, then I could play all these characters and it'd be amazing, but we just don't have that time. But creating these characters, creating these worlds in some cases has been so eye-opening to me as a player that I've been able to kind of see the mechanics of character creation across so many different systems that I was actually able to translate that into my own game, which is Chimera, a powered by the apocalypse game where you blend multiple genres together and create a character by blending multiple character types together. It's interesting because it's like it's my love letter to character creation.
Mm-hmm.
It's my love letter to collaborative world building, and what my design partner Amr Amaras and I have come up with. It's something special. Like if you listen to Character Creation Cast and see the passion that I have for creating characters for RPGs, take all of that passion and push it into game design, you can kind of see where Chimera is going. And right now, the sky's the limit for Chimera, for what you can kind of do with it, which is extremely exciting to me.
What's been with your between character creation cast
Mm-hmm.
with Chimera, with the projects that you've taken on? What's kind of been like that standout, that moment that you look at it and you're like, I just did this, or I just
Mm.
like, and if it's not just one, if it's multiple, like what are those things where you're like, I cannot believe that I am in this position,
Mm-hmm.
and I have just talked to this person, or I've created characters in this world, or
Mm.
what, like what do you have?
Goodness. I know one of them, looking back on it, was James D'Amato, of the One Shot Podcast Network, and One Shot Podcast and Campaign. James heard about Character Creation Cast when we were a fledgling podcast, from one of our earliest guests, Alex Roberts. Alex designed one of my favorite games, Starcrossed,
Hmm.
a game where you use a Jenga tower or a tumbling block tower, so to speak, as a mechanic in the game, much like Dread, if you're familiar with Dread. And you play as two characters that really, really want to be together romantically, but really, really can't, right? For whatever reason.
Hmm.
But it's such a small little like world building, character building thing that really gets your imagination going, and I love it. But Alex was raving to James about the interview that she did, and that in itself warmed my heart. But then James said, "Hey, do you want to be on our network?" And that just kind of blew my mind, right? Because One Shot's not a small network.
Hmm.
It's got some pretty big shows, some pretty big heavy hitters on there, and it was a little intimidating because we drove down to Chicago to record an episode, our first character evolution cast episode with James. Um, and James was going to help us learn how to do character voices without hurting our voice, as well as different tips on how to like talk close to the spine and and whatnot, and how to adjust your body and all that sort of stuff. It's a fantastic episode, but we reached out to him on a whim saying, "Hey, James, we have this idea. We would love it if you were to guest on our show." And James said, "Hey, I want you on my network," in response to our question. And going down there and recording in person and seeing the professionalism and the professional studio environment and all this other stuff was uh it took my breath away in a way that I didn't anticipate, because I had not listened to campaign or one shot before that point,
Hmm.
right? So I had them in my podcast feed, but
Right.
Lord, who has the time to get to all the podcasts they want to get to? So I I was less like, fanboying effectively over the experience, compared to Amelia, who was a huge fan of one shot, who was a huge fan of campaign. And Amelia, was freaking out, so to speak, right? And we got through it. It was a fun experience. We were as professional as we could be, and and we got on the network, and it was wild. It was a very fun journey. We went out for some Chinese food at a kind of like a hole in the wall restaurant near the studio. Chicago driving was a nightmare. It was a day I will never forget, and uh, that just will always stick in my mind as kind of like the beginning of my journey, effectively, even though it wasn't. I had
Hmm.
started quite a bit waits before that, a few months before that at the very least. But yeah, it was an experience that just stood out.
How did you and Amelia connect to form Character Creation Cast?
January 3rd, 2017, I think it was. It might have been 16. I can't remember. I think it was 2017. I threw out a random tweet on Twitter saying, "Hey, Character Creation Cast, this is an idea. Wouldn't it be great if this podcast existed? Ha ha ha! Nobody will ever make this, not even me." Um, and then the next day, I went to this podcasting like support group on Twitter that I was a part of. Um, that I said to them, I cannot get this idea out of my head, but I would need a co-host because I can't do this myself.
Hmm.
And Amelia was like, please pick me. Amelia is such a character creation enthusiast as well. And she's got like Character Creation Cast would not be the podcast it is today without her, because she's got some absolutely amazing organizational skills. And like, just knowing, we went from January 3rd to the idea sparking to releasing 2 full series, 6 episodes on April 2nd, recording 4 series, I think it was, by that point.
Hmm.
So we went from, hey, here's an idea. Hey, now I've got a partner. Hey, here's an idea of how we should structure the episodes. We recorded 2 full episodes, just her and I, as a test of the format. And then I practiced editing those test episodes. We checked our levels. We did all that sort of stuff. We lined up guests. We got the guests. We got to release, and it was well received. It was just such a wild experience. But yeah, it was just happenstance that her and I had connected because we were part of the same group. I I followed her by that point,
Hmm.
but we didn't really have too many interactions before then.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's fascinating when it's just, I like to use the word kismet. Like it's just something in the universe just makes it all work.
Yeah.
What are some of the favorite systems that you've done for Character Creation Cast?
Oh goodness. Masks, our series 2, with the Protean City crew, was one of my favorites. we got to create characters that were um, effectively canon in their podcast. So we used Protean City as the base city instead of Halcyon City for masks. And then we created a group of characters, and some of the backstory from those characters have appeared within the Protean City podcast itself. And like Amelia's character was the Doomed, and Amelia's arch nemesis had a giant energy company that was trying to take her energy away. And that energy company, or that company, became a huge plot point in Protean City, which just a wild amount of like stuff that tumbled out of that one series alone, right? So that was one of my favorites. Star-Crossed, probably still my favorite series. Alex Roberts is just a delight to talk to. And we created 3 pairs of characters between us, and all of them have been just absolutely unique. And gosh, I remember every single one of them, and I love it so much. And Jeff Stormer, Anyone Can Wear the Mask, which was a more recent one.
Mm-hmm.
That one's probably my second favorite out of all the series we've covered. It's hard to pick favorites because they're all good. They're all like your children, yada, yada, yada. But the one with Jeff was just Anyone Can Wear the Mask is an experience of a game, right? It's a game about a superhero's villain, and the city. And those are the 3 roles in the game. And without any one of those, the whole story falls apart. So it's about the rise of the villain and the fall of the hero, and then the eventual rise of the hero again. So you're telling that story as you play this game. And doing character creation for that was just a lot of like world building into it. And as I said before, world building's kind of my jam.
Yeah.
Right? Because I mean, if you look at it, the world that you build together is a character in and of itself, right? From a certain perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And Anyone Can Wear the Mask does world building so well. It's a game where you can churn through a few rounds of it and then get locations and NPCs and plot points for a superhero game. Like if you're playing Masks, or if you're playing if somebody's still playing Heroes Unlimited, if any sort of superhero role-playing game, Anyone Can Wear the Mask can churn out a city for you to play in, which is fantastic. And then you can play as just characters within that city, or you can play the big hero of Anyone Can Wear the Mask as in those other games, which is really cool. And probably my next one would be Chimera. I mean, the game itself is fantastic, but doing this with Amr as well, it was the first time we created characters together. And doing that with giving that experience to Amelia for the first time. She hadn't had a chance to play Chimera before. I've been working on it for 3 years, and I've been trying to get her to play it at conventions, but our schedules have never overlapped correctly. She finally was able to create a character for it and loved it. And then we were able to invite Senda from She's a Super Geek and Pandas Talking Games, and Gnome Stew and various other places on the internet. And Senda stepped in as guest co-host because I could not co-host my own game. And she loved it as well. And everybody created so many good characters on that series. And we created such an interesting world. The world was a D12 shape. And on all the borders of all the pentagons was this weird gravity like flip-floppy thing. And we're like, well, what happens there? Well, maybe there's an extreme sport where you can walk the line, so to speak. And you have to do it in a certain way, or else it's really dangerous. um, or like the gravity can slingshot you across the pence and get you to a different location if you do it right. So there's all like this weird stuff that came out of it that just I don't see that sort of creativity in a lot of different games when it comes to world building.
Hmm.
And being able to experience that with that group was just phenomenal.
It's such a wonderful thing because I had Amr on, I think probably 2 years ago at this point, maybe a little bit
Mm,
longer. Discussed Chimera at the time as something that he had been working on, and just to see it come from where he had discussed it to where it's now like a living, breathing thing is just so incredibly wonderful.
mm.
And kudos to you for with again with everything that you do for getting a game out there for people to play and enjoy.
Yeah, it's been over 3 years since the start. I created the first version in 2 months before a Catacon 2017, and I don't know how I did that, but it happened. And it was garbage, but the core of all the genre blending was there, and they said, this has legs, run with it, and I did. And then a year and a half later, I brought Armor on, and they had brought a wonderful perspective to the different archetypes. Armor has such a brilliant mind. Um, she was working through like math of all of these different like dice combinations and stuff, right? On Twitter. And I was like, hey, what if we do that for Chimera? Because normal PBTA is 2d6 plus or minus different stats, if you're familiar with the Powered by the Apocalypse type systems. Well, Chimera throws those bonuses out and says you get different dice types. So you could have a D4 plus a D6 or a D6 plus a D10 or whatever. Any combination of two dice between D4s and D10s, right?
Hmm.
For your base stats. So and most abilities or most moves that you try to trigger with, depending on your approach, it'll trigger with a different stat. So you just pick up the two dice associated with that stat and you roll it. And if you effectively step up a die from like a D6 to a D8 or whatever, that's like giving a +1 bonus mathematically. The averages kind of work out that way. And stepping down is like a -1 mathematically. So you can kind of see where the math will line up a little bit. The curves look wildly different from 2d6 plus or minus,
Hmm.
but uh, it adds an interesting little tweak to the way you play the game and gives you a tactile chimeric feel, right? Because you're picking up different dice and blending them together to create your rolls. Yeah. We kind of went super meta with the whole chimera concept with the game.
That sounds awesome.
It's an experience. Like uh honestly, it's one of the more creative world building type games out there that you're going to come up with something that's going to be surprising. Um and no two groups are going to be able to play the same game if they start everything from scratch, just because you put two character types together to create each character, and you do that after you build the world. And once you build that world can be so different from one another, right? It could be as mundane as like, I'm in 1920s Chicago. That's the world that I'm in. And that's all I care about. We're near a big lake. There's other stuff around. We're in America, it's fine, whatever. But there also happens to be magical girls and superheroes and different fantasy tropes running around as well, right? So what does all of that piled on there look like? How can we be in regular 1920 Chicago if there's monsters roaming the world, right? So that gets your brain thinking like, well, Does Chicago have a big wall around it now? Is there really big monsters out there? Is it safe to travel? If it is, what sort of different travel happens? And it cascades from there, right?
Hmm.
One of the people on the One Shot Network, who I look up to immensely, Aaron Catano Saez, talks about like a shoe and or lack of shoes and how that can be interpreted for a whole civilization, right? Like if a person says, I don't wear shoes. Well, why don't you wear shoes? Well, we don't wear shoes in my village. Well, why doesn't your village wear shoes? It just cascades down and down and down, deeper and deeper, to a point where it's like, now I've uncovered 200 years of history of this village that came from a single question of, does your character wear shoes? Right? And that's kind of the spirit of Chimera, is you can go wild with it. In Gen Con 2019, at the very end, it was Sunday night, and myself and a few others, Rich Howard, who's a big uh, proponent of everybody in the world, especially in this community, um, we played, quote unquote, played for 5 hours just doing character creation, world building. And we had such a detailed world, such detailed characters, such detailed character interactions with the world. And it just, everything that they threw out there blew my mind. And it was just like that for 5 hours straight. Like I was like, okay, yeah, that's what's happening. That's part of the world now. Yep. This is the way it is. And as a GM, like seeing the joy and wonder like cross everybody's faces as they're buying into this thing that they're creating is such a joy.
That's something that I've definitely seen with games that have that world building included or built into it,
Yeah.
is that you as a player are more invested in it rather than, well, here is the standard setting, let's
Yep.
go forth and see what happens.
Yeah, exactly. The biggest downside is if you're at a convention, it takes up time, right?
Hmm.
I currently can't run Chimera in less than a 4 hour block. I could probably push a 3 hour block, maybe, because 2 hours is going to be devoted to character creation and world building. And that's if I have the reins on and I hold the players back from just unleashing all their creativity, right? Um, and then I have 5 minutes to think of an adventure from all this brand new stuff that never existed 2 hours prior to that, and figure out how to make a story that makes sense, that has a beginning, middle, and end, and play that within 2 hours. It's hard, but it's so rewarding. So many of those games I can still remember vividly because of all the creativity that was poured into it, right? And the wonderful thing is that as you're creating the world, as you're creating your characters, all of these threads are being created for the GM, right? So if you're a GM of Chimera and you're paying attention during this process, you will know the story will just tell itself.
Hmm.
Oh yeah, this is the protagonist. Let's throw them at the end. Or this is the antagonist. Let's throw them at the end. This is the reason why the antagonist is doing what they're doing, right? That was all defined by the players. You just have to put the pieces together,
Hmm.
and then the story kind of tells itself. Plus, there's the whole technique of, well, we built this world together. Why don't you tell me where we are starting? That gives you a couple extra minutes to think.
Now, before we wrap up, Ryan, I did have I guess I've got a good last question.
Hmm.
looking back at your journey from starting in middle school to where you are now,
Hmm.
how do you I guess how do you see yourself in like the tabletop community? Because it is definitely one where going on Twitter or going on the internet as a whole, like
Hmm.
it's such a wonderful community. Um, but how do you like where do you see yourself at? Where do you see the games going? Because we've definitely gotten away from, say, like Dungeons and Dragons, while still being the big one out there.
Hmm.
People are playing a wide variety of games. There's a ton of games out there for people to play. Things are being kickstarted every week or month, it
Hmm.
seems, for just new adventures and journeys. How do you see the community now, and where do you see yourself going in the community in the future?
Oh, that's interesting. There's a lot of the community that is tumultuous at the present. I think it has a lot to do with there's this pandemic going on
Hmm.
that is agitating to so many different folks, and um a lot of people have more time probably to um I don't know, cause drama, I guess. I don't know. I don't really see it firsthand. I always see the reactions to all the drama that goes on in the TTRPG industry. So I can't speak on that for sure, but there's a lot of weirdness, but then there's like so much joy, like seeing some of these really diverse Kickstarters like skyrocketing to success is phenomenal to see. The resurgence of like single
Hmm.
player role playing games, these journaling games is
Yes.
fascinating. Like that whole journaling thing is like I didn't get it before, but then Victoria Rogers was like, "Hey, you want to read this game, this journaling game that I created?" And I'm like, "Oh, sure." And I read it. It was a cooking journaling RPG where you cook a meal, you literally cook a meal based on the prompts, right? And then you write your response to it. And I'm like, whoa, what? This is cool. This is like it's like a very introspective, almost meditative sort of experience. And I'm like, are a lot of journaling games like this? And I looked into it, and yeah, that it's a very introspective experience going through these journaling games. And I'm like, that's really interesting. I don't know if I could write one, but I love the concept. And I love that this whole we can't get together thing has exploded the single player RPG market, so to speak, right? So that's one thing that's wonderful that came out of it. Um, and I can see kind of this um in the indie TTRPG space. I can see it becoming more prevalent in the tabletop community. I can see big names like Dungeons and Dragons, Paizo, um, and so on and so forth, kind of getting onto equal footing, so to speak, sometime in the future.
Hmm.
I don't know if it'll ever be there because capitalism, but aside from the whole money aspect, a lot of indie games are producing just gorgeous works of art in their games. Especially with the successful Kickstarters.
Hmm.
These books are like professional quality. They are fantastic to have on your bookshelf and to play and to look at all the wonderful pictures that they were able to commission, all that stuff, and knowing that like all this work went into these projects and now experiencing myself with Chimera,
Hmm.
it's it's really cool seeing this indie scene kind of getting elevated. Like it's not just D&D. anymore in a lot of people's minds. It's role playing, and
Yep.
that's kind of the way it should be, right? Where I see myself in that, I just want to be a person that teaches people how to play these games through character creation. I want to be a voice that people can say, "Oh yeah, I learned about how to do this cool thing as a player from Ryan and Amelia or whomever we have as guests on the show." I want to have, you know, I want to have a successful game. I want people to experience it. I want to bring people joy in this community where they can feel safe and confident to play any way they want. And knowing that having an open communication with the groups will allow them to do that,
Hmm.
right? So I've always been a big proponent of safety at the table. I've always been a proponent of communication at the table. And I'm always going to uplift voices, in the community as much as I can. Um, I retweet so much on
Yep.
Twitter, so much. If you follow me, you'll see a lot of retweets from a lot of people because there's a lot of people doing a lot of cool things.
Absolutely.
And I want their voices heard as much as possible. So if you do end up following me, you'll see a lot of that. And I just love being kind of there, helping lift people up, even if I'm in the background, right?
Hmm.
Because I don't need to be at the forefront. I just want people to have fun.
And that is a fantastic thing to go out on. Is that right there? Is that you just want to people to have fun?
Mm.
And I feel you on the retweets, because there was definitely a time where I was like, am I even saying one thing in a day, or am I just retweeting
Yep.
everybody that I like? There's so much stuff out there that I want people to like, even if it just attracts one person
Yep.
to take a look at it. It's like, then I have been successful in sharing what I find really interesting that's out there,
Yeah.
whether it's art or games or creative works. It's
Hmm.
so rewarding to be able to follow people. And it's one of the things where when I was going through my list of people to ask on, I was like, dang, like I've been following you for so long, and I feel intimidated asking you, because you've been doing so much for so
Mm.
many different things. It's just, I was like, oh gosh, like let me ask, but I don't know. He's got a lot of stuff going on.
Uh, I love interacting with people, and I am an introverted extrovert at heart. However ironic that is. And seriously, if you ask me to guest on something, chances are I'm going to say yes, as long as you're a good person. And I know you got your heart in the right place, and I am very happy to be here. Uh, you know, uh, Talking about all this stuff with you. It's been an absolute joy.
Oh, it has been my pleasure. Just one of the things I love, and I know I'm dragging this out, is getting to like, it has been a joy just to listen to your stories, whether it's been Sailor Moon, whether it's been your journey through tabletop role playing. It even makes me want to go try Wheel of Time again, just to dig into the world building and
Yeah,
the lore that's in there. And it has been an absolute pleasure to listen to you today.
absolutely. I've had such a blast being here with you.
Now, for people that have made it to the end here, and they want to find your work or
Hmm.
they want to follow you, what are the best places to do so? Where can they find everything that you do?
Absolute best place to find me online is on Twitter at Lord Neptune, all one word. And that's Neptune as in the Sailor Scout, not the planet. Same spelling, don't worry about it. You can also find my work. Character Creation Cast is at Creation Cast on Twitter. Chimera RPG is at Chimera RPG on Twitter. I'm also currently writing season 1 of a podcast called Side Heroes, which is a podcast about a hero and the most important person in that hero's life, told from the perspective of that important person who happens to not have superpowers. You can find that at Side Heroes Pod on Twitter. You could also go to lordneptune.com to find other things that I'm working on. And probably the biggest thing to plug right now is Chimera is on its initial public release, version 0.75. We are going to be updating to version 8 or 0.8 relatively soon, I would say within the next few months or so. But if you buy the current version, you'll get all the versions that we release up until the actual Kickstarter version. And you can go to play.chimera.games to go right to our itch page. Gosh, I do so much, don't I? Like I didn't even mention a Horror Borealis, which I do the sound design for. The Broadswords, which I'm starting to do dialogue editing for. And I'm sure there's something I've missed. But follow me at Lord Neptune and you'll get updates on everything that I'm doing.
Absolutely. So I'll have all of the or all of the links and places to go, so that way you can follow Ryan and pick up their work. Definitely pick up Chimera.
Mhm.
Definitely check out Character Creation Cast, because it is something that when he announced it and they created it between he and Amelia, just take a listen, because it's well worth it. They've got a bunch of great episodes to take a listen to, and you've heard Ryan talk about some of his favorites, so maybe they'll be yours. And if not, I'm sure, like I always say about my podcast, there's probably an episode out there for you that will be the episode that gets you hooked on it.
Yeah, there's been about 40 series by the time this episode has released, and goodness, just pick one. And if a game sounds interesting to you, pick that series to start with. And I guarantee you'll learn about the game. You'll have some fun along the way. It's a relaxing, fun, family-friendly listen. So definitely check it out.
And Ryan, I just want to say again, thank you for taking the time to talk with me for this podcast, because again, I've had an absolute pleasure getting to listen to you.
Absolutely, same here.
Thank you for listening to Tales from the Fandom. Subscribe to us on iTunes or your podcast app of choice. Follow us on Facebook at www.facebook.com/talesfromthefandom to see photos, links, leave feedback, and check out upcoming guests. If you'd like to be a guest, email David at talesfromthefandom@gmail.com.